Hey guys, welcome to It's Not Soccer, It's Football. Today we are going to be doing our special Tottenham Hotspur season preview. Luckily, we are joined today by a couple of local Spurs supporters. I'm going to let them introduce themselves here in just a second and tell us a little bit how they started following the club. Before I do that, I'll give a little Tottenham story of my own. I was lucky enough to be at the last game at White Hart Lane when unfortunately y'all Spurs beat Manchester United 2-1. And I actually almost got murdered walking to the game wearing this. I didn't really know any better. I was in London, and to get to the stadium, you take a train about a mile and a half south of the stadium. And when I get off of the trains and out the train station, it is just a mile of pubs as far as you can see, and all white kits everywhere, nothing but Spurs supporters. And so I just come trouncing out the train station with my bright red Pogba kit on, which, I mean, bright red was bad enough. Pogba made it worse. And so I didn't make it but about 30 or 40 steps until a couple of guys came up to me, and I could tell they were about to kick my ass until I started talking. And then they're like, "Oh, where are you from, mate? Where are you from?" And told them, and they were like, "Man, you really don't need to be walking around by yourself wearing a bright red United kit like this. That is not smart." I was like, "All right, man, I appreciate it." And sure enough, I mean, that happened about 5 times on the way to the stadium. So like a group of guys came up to me. I thought I was about to get put in my place, and then once they heard my redneck accent, they gave me a pass. I guess they were like, "Well, this guy probably didn't know anything anyway, so we'll just let him go." But that's kind of my fun Tottenham story. Even though United lost the game, it was amazing to be at that last game at White Hart Lane, and all the fans rushed the field at the end of the game, and we couldn't leave for a while. And then I had to leave the other way through this kind of sketchy neighborhood, and thought I was going to get killed going that way. But it was a great experience. So, anyways, that's my Tottenham story. Ryan Stallings, a local Tottenham fan. Go ahead and give your intro.
Hi, I'm Ryan Stallings. I live here in Little Rock, and I've been a Tottenham Hotspur fan since 1999. Fandom started in middle school, sixth grade, seventh grade on the team. Everyone that I played with, now that we were getting to watch some Premier League games here in the States, they were either Manchester United or Arsenal fans, with a few Chelsea fans. And I had taken it upon myself to always be the odd man out on most opinions, and then who we were going to follow in the Premier League. That became like, who am I going to pick that's not one of the popular teams, but it is a team that I can follow just to kind of goad some of my teammates. So I was like, okay, who does Arsenal not like? And then it was like, okay, who are the other London clubs? And it kind of left me with Chelsea. Wasn't going to follow Chelsea, and so it left me with West Ham and with Tottenham. And I really, really hate the color combination of West Ham, and there was really something about the crest of Tottenham just being kind of unique, and not being a shield or a roundel crest, that really stood out to me and started following. And it was their first year that they actually had a former Arsenal manager taken over, and it was their first year back in Europe, which they didn't make an impact whatsoever back in the European Cup. But yeah, kind of became a Tottenham fan from there, and suffered a lot at the hands of teammates and also through results for several years.
Awesome, much appreciated, much appreciated. Todd, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, I don't go back near as far as Ryan does. My first game was Man City, Tottenham in Nashville. And, really, I talked about this on the last one, but the pub crawl before the game, the Spurs group was over here on this side of the street. Man City was on this side of the street, and every hour you switched and you crossed the street. And so one of the things that helped me in that is that there were guys from London that said that they came to the States to watch the Spurs play because they had better access to the players, because they don't have that same access in London. But the cool thing about it was I was baptized in the hymnals, so I got to hear a lot of the songs, and just finding a spot where you legitimately believe you've got people that hold your back, even though they're strangers, um, yeah, I've been a Spurs fan ever since.
Nice. Appreciate that. And as always, my trusted co-host, Mason Sheffield, is with us. Go ahead and get right into this Spurs episode. We'll start off with a little bit of history. Just kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on who the best team in Tottenham's history, let's go modern history in the Premier League area, but just kind of which one of those teams do you think was the best? Any players that stood out? Todd, you want to go ahead and start that off, and then Ryan, you join in?
Yeah, once again, I don't go back that far. So, I mean, the year that we finished second, the year that Leicester won it. That was a pretty big year. And I really think that, I mean, like I've listened to, like, basically I believe that the Pop Spurs is a culture of players and coach that I've never had a lens into before. And I really think that, like, some of the things that Poch was able to accomplish, like getting to the UEFA final, that team was amazing because no one expected them to get there when they did, and blowing up the way they did. Um, and we'll talk more about Poch in a little bit whenever we talk about how Josie's doing. But like I just, after listening to Brave New World and hearing some of the different things that Poch had a mind for, like, that's the Spurs that I like the most. But it's also the only Spurs that I know other than the current one.
Understood. Ryan, what do you think about it?
I'm going to agree with more recent history. I would say the 2016-17 season up through our Champions League final versus Liverpool, finishing second to Leicester City, where we kind of just faltered the last 3-4 games of the season, had an opportunity to win, and then followed that up the next year with a third place finish, again kind of faltering near the end, a lot of injuries piling up. And then finishing the next year a little further back, but having the chance to play in that Champions League final and making that Champions League final where we were again suffering a dearth of injuries. At least since '99, that's the best teams that I think they've had. And everything Todd said about Poch and his mentality and what he built with the players, I think kind of suited the club as a whole in a way and fit really well, that even if you were a newer fan to Tottenham, you kind of felt that aspect of the culture that Tottenham had, that you're not going to be necessarily as flashy. You're not going to spend as much money. Your style isn't going to be 3, 4, 5 superstars, but you're going to grind out victories. And, I know we'll get a little more into it, as Todd said, but I think that was something that if you were to talk to near a man when it came to Spurs fans, that probably for several months after Poch was canned and Jose was brought in, you just kind of felt a sense of loss, even as wins started to pile up and there was positive results, only because you may have known who Jose was from afar, coaching other clubs, and that you've kind of become accustomed to this culture and identity of Tottenham, that you don't really see how those two fit at all. And for a lot of fans that aren't privy to things behind the scenes, um, were we having a series of frustrating results last year up until Pochettino was let go? Yeah, absolutely. Did any of us fans want to see him gone? No, I think every fan thought we were just having a run of bad luck, that we'd see it turn around. If not by the end of that season, then we'll at least have the patience to see it into the next season, even if we were running on gratitude for where he had brought us up to the season before.
Yeah, I can see that. And it was one of those things where that was such a weird season last season. I mean, I think United and Tottenham were neck and neck at that point, and we ended up finishing third. Like nobody wanted top four. Chelsea was like, "Here, Leicester, you take it." Leicester was like, "No, United, you take it." We were like, "Here, Arsenal, you take it." It was just one of those seasons where I think you're right. Had they stuck with Poch the whole time and ridden out those kind of bumpy spots, y'all probably would have still been right where you ended up anyways, if not maybe a few spots higher, not having to go through that transition. You also weren't helped by injuries. And we can kind of transition from there into how y'all finished. Where did y'all finish in the table last season? fifth, sixth.
I think it was sixth.
Yeah.
Because I think it was kind of like, yay, we have automatic into European League. And then there was a funky finish somewhere in another cup where Arsenal sent us down into the what is it, not even qualifiers, like pre-qualifiers for qualifiers.
Yeah, that was a double victory for the Arsenal.
Welcome to Bulgaria.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, last season, obviously, sixth isn't where you wanted to be. Just kind of talk about the road to get there. Y'all obviously mentioned your thoughts on Poch being let go, but just kind of experiencing the range of feelings from when Poch was let go to when Jose came in, and then the season was shut down, and then it was started back up, and the Kane injury, the Son injury. Just kind of talk about how you felt the end of last season went, kind of once that change happened. Todd, go ahead and start first. Todd, go ahead.
So, for me, I think that, like, I don't know. I think one of the reasons why I attached to Poch is because in all of my club soccer, I didn't have the talent that a lot of other kids did. So, like, that idea of development, grinding, and caring about everybody, period, in the story, and not just the stars, that was the thing that I connected with the most about Poch. So, I mean, like, I was at work, and the guy who took me to that Nashville game, he texted me first and said, "Hey, I'm sorry I got you into this." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And then the news hit my phone like not even 5 minutes later that Poch was gone. And I legitimately thought, like, okay, here's a guy that is okay with the way things are and understand the way things are, and you're gonna let him go. And he really, like, created a culture of balancing big stars with belief and bringing, like, the older players, the star players, mentoring the young guys, and really giving those people the chance. Like, when he started Walker Peters against Barca and Messi made him look stupid, like Walker Peters is going to remember that forever, and is probably a better player because someone believed him in that moment. And the rest of that game, he didn't let that mistake happen again. And so, like, yeah, when I think about that switch of what Jose does of buying players, switching to a counter mentality, being a defensive team, like, yeah, we've had great defenses, but what people have been excited about and what we all really enjoyed was the build-up play and the fact that it was a team environment and not just, okay, compress and go on. So I did not like it. I thought it was crazy. I didn't want the chosen one. But now, I mean, like, I think when you think about somebody like Jose who's been to everywhere, there's got to be some value in that experience, and there's some belief that he's creating in the team for them to be performing like they are. Now, I don't understand the difference of him being able to talk Daniel Levy into opening his checkbook. Like, I don't know what those people skills are versus Poch, or if Daniel Levy just knew that it needed to be that switch, that once they were on that level and they were making that big money, that, okay, cool, now we're going to go ahead and do this thing.
Well, and I think it's also one of those things where when you bring in a coach like Jose, you don't bring him in unless you're going to spend big and bring in those players, because with his style, you're just wasting time bringing him in and not spending on big money. Ryan, what are your thoughts on kind of that switch and how y'all finished the season?
Well, I think coming off first of what you just mentioned, as a Spurs fan, there would be some bitterness to that too. It's like, okay, so you sack Poch, but you're going to give Jose the money and open up the purse and spend this kind. It's no different than for Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans here in the States. Okay, so now you get Tom Brady, and now you're going to open up the purse for an offensive line and a running game and support. Um, Similar to Todd's feelings, I actually had a friend here in Little Rock texted me prior to me getting the notification. I was like, "Oh, dude, that sucks. I didn't realize you guys, had it out for Potch that way." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I think the team struggle felt, here as an American fan, it felt like a fan struggle. It felt like a family struggle. Like we just came off Champions League final that we had no business making it to. And I still acquitted ourselves well with really no weapons um, to an unstoppable Liverpool team. And so it just felt like, okay, this is going to be a one-off hard season, and we'll come back stronger. And like Todd said, we enjoyed the style of play that we had under Pachi, where everyone was involved in the build-up, and kind of sitting there listening to Todd speak, I realized so much of my coaching just at the youth level has been built on that because kids always think, oh, defense, I don't get to be involved in the play. And how I've so much of my coaching is how no matter where you stand on this field, you're involved in the entire game. Um, and so when you bring in Jose, and it's like, okay, the Manchester United and the Chelsea fans can all make the jokes about, okay, now you're going to bottle your 1-0 game and you're going to score a goal early and then sit back and try to hold on to that lead.
Mark that bus, baby.
Yeah, there was no identity. And at the same time, I'm going to say Jose spent, what was it, a year, 2 years out? And maybe for even someone like him, that was a time of reflection and a time for some introspection and maybe gaining some aspects of humility. Um, Watching this all or nothing show that I had no desire to watch whatsoever, but my twin stepsons were pleading to watch it, and we've now kind of made it a nightly ritual to watch about 30 minutes an evening the last couple of weeks, and kind of seeing Jose in there. Yeah, there's still the impish kind of Jose's always got a comment for everything, always has a retort, but at the same time, I do think there is a more reflective, um, really self-reflecting than I think there is before. I think
It's
there's a true.
It's
Oh,
sorry to
sorry.
cut you off. It's one of those things where it's hard to learn about yourself when you're always winning. It's that adversity. It's that going to a couple clubs and failing and falling on your ass and having everybody trash you in the press and going home to your family who's tired of reading articles online about how horrible you are. And like even an egomaniac like Jose, that has to get through and that has to make you take a look at things. And listen, I was worried that y'all were going to get Jose's best, that we got his worst and y'all were going to get his best. I've kind of had the same mixed feelings you have watching that all or nothing. I think at times he's a little more receptive to players than I thought he would be, but also at times he's still kind of the prick Jose that we know Jose to be. So sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
No, not at all. You're fine.
You got anything else on just the finish of last
Yeah, I
season?
was just gonna say, just with part of that, it's kind of like what you said actually is about like the player respect, the player interactions in his office. Some of them, the kind of give or take. I think that there was, like you said, there's a balance of a changed man, and there's still going to be that person who he is. His interactions with Harry, where he's like, "I'm the star. I'm not supposed to be the star. That's just the way it is. How do we make you the star?" Interactions with Danny Rose that were not great and did not end well, but it's like, okay, well, I respect you as a man. I respect you coming and saying this to my face, even if I disagree. And it
Right.
wasn't like, oh, I'm smarter than you and cut him off. He heard him out and acknowledged, I hear what you're saying. A Jose of 2-3 years ago probably is not having that conversation in
I
that
agree.
manner behind the scene.
I expected him to blow up, and I was like, okay, maybe that when I saw how he handled that, I was like, okay, maybe he has learned some things. Maybe he does understand the modern player a little more. Jose's one of those coaches that is more old school. That like you could see him having no problem coaching guys like Vieira that was at Arsenal back in the day, or Keane that was at United. Like some of these hard nosed, just gruff players, they'd have no problem playing for Jose. It's the Paul Pogbas and the Daily Allies and the pretty boys of the world that want to be on Instagram and have the Nike and the Adidas contracts that tend to clash cultures with Jose and just kind of rub him the wrong way. And, he can say all he wants. I don't want it to be that way. It's just that way that I'm the man. It's that way because he's always wanted it that way in the past. Like now it may just be reputation, but he's earned that reputation from being how he's been. So But no, I think it's been fascinating to watch. I enjoyed watching the previous season when they were showing Pep and City. Even though it wasn't my clubs, it's still kind of cool to get that behind the scenes perspective on the club. What do you think
One of the
about the
things that
signing? Yeah, go ahead.
one of the things I want to throw in there on that is if an aspect of Josie's contract was those cameras being there in the room, you have to question whether or not that was Daniel Levy doing the right thing for his club to like rein in, to have that data and be able to coach that stuff. I mean, because there was got to be a filtering session of the all or nothing. Like there's things that probably we'll never see, but there's still some stuff where I wonder if that was Levy stepping in and saying, "Hey, I'm going to coach you being that." Like I've thought that 3 or 4 times because of, I mean, like, who allows that into their locker room? Like, that's a weird thing.
I mean, Pep did, and they're winning titles. That's why it's hard for me to criticize anybody at Tottenham when City did it the season before, and you see what they have going on these days. So it's like, I do think Daniel Levy enjoys being the star of his own show, 1,000%. You can tell from watching the episodes, he has no problem being on camera. And every time they interview him, he's just a kid in a candy store loving the attention. But at the same time, when you're opening a new stadium, when you have the debt you guys do to try and grow the brand and grow the club, you heard Ryan. How old are your kids?
They're both 11.
I mean, you're talking about growing the future growth of the club. You got 11-year-old kids begging dad to watch the show. You think they're going to be bigger Tottenham fans or smaller Tottenham fans after they watch that show every night? They're probably going to want to watch the games even more now. So, it's one of those things that I think it's just part of the modern game. If you're going to grow the club, if Tottenham really want to compete year in, year out with City, with Liverpool at the top, to be able to spend the kind of money I'm sure you guys want your club to be able to spend, they have to be able to generate that revenue. And that's one thing, I hate that United don't run their club like a club, but they're a little too far on the business side. I think it will help Tottenham a lot running somewhat more as a business with the new stadium and with the new revenue streams, because it's hard to just spend and spend and spend if you're missing out on Champions League. I mean, it happened to us. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience. It's hard to spend a lot of money when you're missing out on all that Champions League money, and then you lose more sponsor money because you didn't have Champions League money. So the game is a business, unfortunately, these days. Off-season signings. What do you think? Since we're talking about money and having money to spend, what do you guys think about the signings you guys made? Were you expecting more, expecting less? Ryan, you want to start this one off?
I used to really get into American football recruiting in the off season, and then somewhere along the way, I just decided I was burnt out with it, and so I kind of treat off season signings outside of like the biggest names as similar to like college football recruiting. I'll just tune it out. Let me know when game one is or when there's a preseason, and I'll tune back in. I kind of took my cues really from Spurs Twitter as far as where people. Yeah, I know not always the greatest idea, but as far as what fans a little closer to the club, as far as geographic proximity and what they thought of it, and their ears to the ground, and talking to people that work within the organization. Uh, I'll admit I did not know who Hoiberg was until he started showing up in rumors. Still was kind of jury kind of out on him until he played a really good game in the last week, Tuesday, and then had a good showing, I believe, Saturday, the previous week. And then of course, Bale's exciting. I have some memories of watching a few of those games before it was widely accessible here. Um, and then, of course, I never thought I'd see him back at Tottenham ever again. I just thought he was one of those guys destined to finish his career at a top club and then maybe show up in MLS someday at the Galaxy. But of course, that's exciting, and you hope that maybe this is kind of a rebirth for him. I know Real Madrid did not end well on good terms. I've seen friends of mine that are Real Madrid fans for some reason, and things that they continue to say about Bale. I think there's a lot of finger pointing in both sides and probably some justifications, but it looks like he's enjoying watching Spurs soccer, football, and I hope that he's in shape to join. And of course, Reguilon, just masterclass, clearly the best player on the field in Tuesday's match.
What do you think about old Doherty? I think that may have been y'all's best signing for a Jose system, having that top of the line wingback that can get down the field, get in crosses, be solid on the back, but really get that transition started going forward. I felt like that may have been, for Jose's system, the most important signing you guys made in the offseason. Todd, what are your thoughts on the signings?
So for me, the signings are I mean, like, when we talk about managing a club and managing dudes legitimately believing in what you're trying to do, it's heartbreaking to see people that you've seen on a team for 2 or 3 years and see the signings come in and say, okay, what's going to happen now? Like Dele Alli falling out, like that's kind of hard for me to see. And then, like I said it on the last episode about worrying about Lucas Moura with Bale coming in. I like Bale. I hope that he wakes up, but Reguilon coming in and Doherty, those are the two that I've seen when they play, like legitimately doing the work. Hoiberg is great. I'm happy now that Lo Celso is doing really well. I miss Sissoko on the field too. Never thought I'd say that, but the work ethic from him is crazy. Like I I don't that's gonna be my tagline anytime I'm on here is I don't understand some of the choices, other than like how do you move Eric Dyer, who's been a CDM for forever, into center back, and how do you convince him and make that happen? I don't get that, but obviously Jose does great things because it looks like he knows what he's doing.
Kind of a crappy situation for Mr. Dyer, huh? Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Hey, there's already Eric Diarrhea shirts going around. So I just to kind of follow up real quickly with what Todd said, I do think that the last maybe 4 or 5 matches is where you're starting to see, despite his complaints and protestations, you're starting to see the Jose mastercraft of finally, I think, getting to a place of this is what I have, this is what I have to work with, and the tinkering that he's able to do. So you have the players buying in, but I think you're also starting to see Jose, okay, this is what I'm going to be able to get. I'm not at a deeper pocketed club or one that's going to show itself to be as deep pocketed as clubs I've been at in the past. And I think there's an acceptance now showing there that this is what I have to work with. And how do I bring out the most of those players to not do everything or try to do everything, but to fit this system?
Yeah, I really do think the more time he has, the more that team will actually have. You could tell they were just in transition, and now they're starting to have a bit of a character. Whether or not that's the character you want your team to have is another story, but everybody does have to be on the same page, pulling in the same direction, and they do look like they're starting to get, a little closer to that point. Let's go ahead and look at some results from the first few weeks of the season for Tottenham before we preview the rest of it. So week 1, tough loss to a much improved Everton team. I think Everton is going to be very tough to keep out of the top 6. They have probably the best informed striker in England right now in Calvert-Lewin. James Rodriguez may end up being the best signing of the all season in the Premier League. They're solid in defense. Pickford's in decent form and keeper. They're going to be a tough team to beat for people. And, obviously they gave you guys all you wanted that first week. Able to bounce back pretty nice in the next game and get 5 goals against Southampton, thanks to my man Son getting 4, who, by the way, I think is probably the most underrated player in Europe at this point. And then Week 3, I think we'll go ahead and go into just how horrible this new handball rule is while we discuss this. But a very, very tough 2 points dropped at the end of the Newcastle game. Thoughts on that call and just the handball rule in general, Todd?
I'm gonna go away from that for a second, just because it makes me that angry. The this is the part where I get worried about the counterattack thought process. When teams park the bus, the counter doesn't happen as much and the field doesn't spread out as much. We had our chances, and when we have chances as many times as we did, one's got to go in. Now, if I were to grade 2 players on the opposite team that actually that did really well, their keeper Darlow, and then I'm actually I don't like rooting against or rooting for anybody that's not in a Spurs thing, but Almiron coming to Newcastle from Atlanta, like that's a pretty cool thing to watch when somebody is playing balls in correctly, like and doing things in a way that you're like, oh, I saw that here. Um, those are 2 players that I'm going to say put us on our heels. The the call I disagree with was the amount of time from when Kane got fouled and Son got to shoot. That bothered me a little bit because it was in the referee's mouth, and I don't think that play being allowed to go on was advantage. And I think that changed the game more than the handball did, because I think that would have been a free kick from right outside the 18, an easy shot for somebody to curve in, and I think that was the shifting moment in that game. Now the handball, like the rule is the freaking rule, and it's dumb. When you have as many managers coming out, including the one of the guy who benefited from it, like the Newcastle manager said, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't do it. I benefited today, but I don't want my club to fall to that next time. We have got to do something. That's ridiculous. Like, and we had one the in the Southampton game too, where it popped up off of somebody, and like that's it. It wasn't someone purposely attempting to make themselves bigger. It was the ball hit an arm, and in previous years it wouldn't be that gnarly. And like I don't understand.
I said from the beginning that, if that was me and I was a striker and had 2 defenders around me at any time in the box, I'm just going to chip it up at their arms. As long as this is the rule, anytime I got surrounded by defenders in the box, I would chip it up at their arms. It's basically what happened in the Crystal Palace United game where, Lindelof's just running, and I hate Lindelof. I would love to throw him under the bus for this, but he's just running, and the guy chips the ball up right at his arm. I don't know what players are supposed to do. I don't know how Dyer is supposed to be in the air and get hit by somebody else and not have his arm go up. That's just basic human biomechanics. And to then call that a handball when he was looking the other direction, I think, credit to the Newcastle manager for having the integrity and calling what it is. I just hope that they get their stuff together and fix it before it ruins too many more matches this season. Because again, so far I haven't, maybe the one that IU did from Palace, but so far I haven't really seen too many attackers intentionally trying to take advantage of this rule. That's going to change the longer the season goes on if that rule stays the same way it is. These smart wingers, instead of putting their crosses in from outside the box, are going to come a little further inside and cross it right up at the guy's arm, hope that it clips it on the way through. You're going to have the attackers doing the same thing, just chipping it up inside the area. I think it's really going to ruin a lot of games this season if they don't get it fixed. You got any thoughts on that, Ryan or Mason, on the handball rule?
I agreed with everything you and Todd said.
Nice.
I also want to say that it was very awesome to see Lucas get one in the goal. Dyer should have had one. Like he had an open header that he just didn't put on frame. And for a guy that used to be a part of the attack, or at least the middle of the field, like I probably would have felt good if he put that in the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah, and also, I mean, in that first half, sorry, just also to mention when Todd, going back to what Todd said, the kind of where you are exposed in that counter game where you're relying on the counter and parking the bus. Really, in that first half, after Mora had his first goal, we continued to attack. And I was like, okay, maybe we're not going to park the bus. Maybe we're going to continue to counter and try to build, at least a 2 or 3 goal lead here. And after I think Sonny clanged off the post and clanged off the crossbar, and then second half it was clearly park the bus time. So I was like, never mind. So maybe that is the Jose growth, is we won't park it for the first half, but then the second half we will.
Some of the stats I'm showing here: 66% possession. They had 23 shots, 12 of them on goal, and Newcastle had 11 saves. So, I mean, Tottenham were getting opportunities. They were just not being rewarded for it.
Yeah, you got to take Newcastle. Go ahead, Todd.
Newcastle had 1 shot on target. That's a stat that will always infuriate me whenever you're owning the whole game and doing everything.
On a penalty kick for a bad handball. That's their 1 shot on target.
Like, we really did own that game, and then, yeah. Like, can you imagine the moral fiber of the guy who took the penalty if he would have just, like, kicked it, like, barely tapped it?
I've done that before out at Burns Park. Granted, I couldn't do it. I don't think anybody has the integrity to do it in the Premier League. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you do that in a Sunday league, that's a little bit of integrity. I think you're asking a whole lot of somebody to do that in a Premier League game when there are definite 2 points on the line for a team that might be in a relegation battle this season. But no, I hear what you're saying. I agree. When it's a bad call, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. All right. So obviously not the result you guys were looking for against Newcastle. Moving on to this weekend, big game against United, Jose's old club. Obviously a game Jose wants to win. Always a game Paul Pogba shows up for, because him and Jose had it out. I wish Paul Pogba showed up like that for every game, but I expect him to have another good game tomorrow. What are you guys' thoughts on the game against United this weekend? What do you guys expect to see? Who wants to start on that one? Mason, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and throw some banter is already going down between the coaches. Apparently, Mourinho had complained about the goals being too small, and so Ole said last season we had too many draws, so that's a big plus, but you have to be happy Jose isn't here to measure the goals. And there was already a response from Mourinho again. He said, I understand that for him, dimensions of the goalpost are not important. What is important for him are dimensions of the 18-yard box. He would never accept to play with a 17-yard box. I think he would prefer a 22-yard box.
That would be 26. Make it 26.
So
Bruno for Golden Boot. Make it 26. Hilarious. Anybody else got any thoughts on that before we move on? Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think waded into waters that Jose owns as far as the banter there. And bias aside, I think oh, sir, you brought that upon yourself.
Oh, that's a schoolboy asking Eminem to have a rap battle. It's just not going to go well for you. That's what Jose does. He's an asshole. Only you're a nice guy. Be a nice guy. I agree.
Yeah, it's probably yes, please have my name in your mouth. I just hope we show up and we're not looking ahead and looking past United to the West Ham game.
Todd, thoughts on it? I'm going to respond to that. Go ahead, Todd.
I'm thinking more about the matchups. So I'm thinking about I haven't seen any named lineups. So if it's Davies, how's Davies gonna? How is he gonna mark Rashford or Martial? Or if it's the other side, if it's Doherty or Reguilon, whichever side they line up on, like how are they going to manage that? Because Rashford and Martial are the outlets that they come through. I have faith in the middle of our park. And then, I mean, for y'all, I'm like, I cannot wait for Son to run past Lindelof. I cannot wait for it because there's no way Lindelof.
Waiting a while. I don't think Son's playing this weekend, buddy. You're gonna be waiting a while on that. I think he's still hurt.
Oh, well,
I
can't wait for anyone with
but
half of Son's pace to run past Lindelof because Lindelof doesn't have pace.
I think most of us on this call could run past Lindelof, so that's not saying much. But yeah, unfortunately, y'all aren't gonna have Son. I really was not liking our chances. Once I found out Son wasn't playing, I actually do think United will get a result from it now. But I think it's either going to be a draw or 2-1. That's what I see that game being. It's either going to be 1-1, 2-2, or 2-1. Either way is what
I think it's going to open up. I think Jose is going to let it go. Like I think that when you think about somebody that's like, okay, this is what I did for y'all, and this is what y'all pegged me as. I think that there's going to be some changes that he does, and I think that the 3-5-2 that happened on Tuesday was a practice run.
I really hope Ole doesn't go with because whenever we do 3 at the back, it goes 5 in the back, and then y'all will dominate us because you'll be in our half the whole time. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, big game this weekend. Anybody got any final thoughts on that United game before we move on to kind of the rest of the season? All right. So I like to kind of break down the season into thirds. Obviously, y'all have already had a few games, but we'll just kind of go with this next little section right here. United game this weekend. The thing that stands out to me about this one is right in this little middle section. I mean, you want to talk about a tough stretch of 6 games.
You're not. Can you screen mirror that, buddy?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought I was sharing again. So you want to talk about a tough stretch of games. This middle section right here where you have City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, Leicester in 5 out of 6 games, and Palace is the other one who've been playing good with Zaha in good form. I think that's really going to decide, are you guys in a battle for top 4 or top 6 coming down the stretch? How many points you get out of these 6 games, I think really dictates how you guys are going to finish this season. Either one of y'all got any thoughts on that first third of the season? Ryan, go ahead.
And not the Liverpool and Leicester and Wolves games right behind those 6?
No, so that's what I'm talking about. This Leicester, so this 6, City.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Palace, Liverpool, Tottenham. And yes, Wolves right after that is not any easier. But
Fulham. Yeah, they show up. Thank you.
Fulham, yeah, that Fulham game will be easy for you. But that especially including Wolves too, because they're a tough side. I mean, that stretch of games right there, I think is really going to define who you guys are this season.
Who's before Brighton? Is it West Ham and?
I think that's United. Or no. Sorry, Burnley. So yeah, it's United, then the West Ham and Burnley games. I think y'all will win both of those, as well as Brighton and West Brom. So I think the United game is going to be where you could possibly drop points. I think that kind of has draw written all over it to me, unfortunately. And then I think these next 2 games, y'all get wins. The 2 games after that, you get wins. So that's 12 points. I think you get at least 10 of those. And then you move into that tough stretch. Coming into Christmas, it's that Wolves game on Boxing Day, and then Fulham to end the calendar year.
If City doesn't pick up some of their play, I mean, like watching them play Liverpool was a shell of themselves normal. So when I probably will get some people yelling at me, but like the belief and culture that I see at Brighton and like those guys coming out and playing hard, I think that's a bigger stumbling block than, because the players are going to be tuned in for Man City, Chelsea, right? I think if we don't perform well in the Brighton game and take care of business at West Brom, that those 2 games taking care of business, I think the rest of them, like we're matching skill sets and we're matching mindsets, and then it's just who puts the ball in the goal. But if we're talking about difference between last season and this season, I'm looking more at the Brighton and West Brom games and saying, let's take care of business and make sure that we don't lose our thing. Because Brighton is not weak. They've played pretty close games every game that they've played.
We played them twice in the last 2 weeks. Trust me, I know. They are, again, if you're going to talk about being in the top 6 conversation, those games are not questions to me. If y'all lose those games, you can go ahead and pack up your season, because if you drop points to Brighton and West Brom going into those 7 games off of those 2 bad results, it's going to be a lot of work to finish in the top 6. Y'all, look, the schedules I've looked through, I think you guys have the most unlucky schedule, the way your fixtures fall, because you can be going into that Christmas, that Christmas time break with such a bad run of games. Coming out of Christmas, a few games you should be able to get some points back on: Fulham, Leeds, Villa, Sheffield. But after that, you're going to have another little run of games. Y'all's are just kind of bunched up together, where you have, a handful of easy games, a handful of hard games. I almost would rather have them kind of stretched out, where you can have that big game and then a couple of smaller games, big game, couple smaller games. You're also going to have Europa and FA Cup and Carabao mixed in there. And that's why I felt like depth is going to be the most important thing this season. What do you guys think about kind of depth and the way you hold up down this final stretch, Ryan?
I think a lot of it falls to injury luck. I think we're due a season where that luck is wind in our sails and not working against us. Scrolling past that, though, coming out of that, Leeds won't be an easy win. I mean, maybe that'll be a final score line of 10-9 and we get 3 points. Via maybe Sheffield. Sorry, Mason.
That's all right.
It's depth, but it's definitely injury luck. And so far, with Son out, I mean, hopefully it's minor and only a couple weeks. But so far, it's kind of trended like, great, here we go again.
Yeah, and injuries are going to be real tough this season, because the way the COVID break and the restart, so the season ended late. People didn't have a true off season. The new season started late. All these fixtures are going to start piling up between Europe and FA Cup and Carabao. And I think depth of squad and fitness is going to be 2 of the most important factors on who finishes top 4 and top 6 this season. More so than ever, because, I mean, there's always a lot of fixtures stacked on top of each other. But this year, it's just going to be a whole nother level that I think a lot of people aren't used to seeing. And then coming down, finishing the season, Wolves and Leicester as 2 of your last 3. Those are both teams that I think you would worry about getting a result against, just because they have good, solid systems and a handful of real solid players. The other two games that stand out during that stretch is the back-to-back United and Everton games. But I really think, if you guys make it through that tough stretch in the middle and you're still in the running for top 6 by, February, March, I really like your chances of maintaining that position. If you get behind the 8 ball before Christmas, I think it's going to be a little tougher down the stretch, because there's just going to be so many games, and it's going to be hard to make up points at that point in the season. Anybody got any thoughts on the final stretch? All righty. Go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to bring it. I think that I like Leicester being one of the last ones. With Leeds, I think that's going to be a more open game, or at least a more exciting game. I circle that one and say that one's going to be fun.
It's standing out to me that I'm pointing out the big games, y'all keep pointing at Brighton and Leeds and West Brom. It's kind of tripping me out. But hey, you gotta win those small ones to make the big ones even matter. So I hear where you're coming from. Trust me, I had Jose as a coach for a few seasons. I remember sweating out those West Brom and Brighton games. So
Or maybe I just
I-
don't want to give any credit to anybody that I don't like.
say what?
So maybe I just don't want to give any credit to anybody I don't like.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Bitterness is always a good motivation. Ryan,
you know, I would be really pleased with a sixth place finish, so long as Arsenal finishes seventh.
never miss a chance to be petty when you can. I like it. I like it. Well, so that kind of takes us to the end of the season. Anybody want to give kind of their predicted finish, what you guys expect to see top 6 wise, top 4 wise, kind of whichever ones you want to do. I'll go ahead and start mine off while you guys can think about it for a second. Going into the season when me and Mason first did this, I had City finishing first. After the signings of Diogo Jota and Thiago, I have Liverpool in first again. I really felt like, and I talked about this with Mason when we did our predictions, that the injury bug would eventually catch up with Liverpool. And the areas I was mainly concerned about it was either Salah or Mane going down for an extended period of time. Now that they have Diogo Jota, I think that they can afford to have an injury and still carry on. And the way Klopp has those guys playing, I think over the course of the season, they're going to be the best team again. I do think City's going to finish second. I know a lot of people went into panic mode when Leicester, beat them the way they did, but I think Pep will get that defense figured out. City were like United, where they didn't get much of an offseason. They didn't get much of a preseason, and both teams started off missing the first week and not really being in good form. I have a lot more faith in City to get that straightened out than I do United, unfortunately. At this point, I'd have to say Chelsea in third because United still hadn't done much business in the window. I think United do have enough to finish fourth, but without some signings, even that is going to be tough. And then I have now moved Everton up to fifth in what I expect to finish, and I really wouldn't be shocked if they got into the top 4. The final team that I see being in that top 4 is either going to be Arsenal or Tottenham. I'm kind of leaning towards Arsenal the way they came out of the gates playing. I think it's going to be a matter of who stays healthier between Aubameyang and Lacazette and Willian, and who stays healthier between Son and Kane and Mora. Whichever one of those front lines stay healthier, that team is going to make top 6. Who wants to go next? Ryan, you want to throw your top 4, top 6 out?
I didn't make any predictions before this season just because with the COVID shortened break going into it, I thought it just kind of feels like the plot could be very similar, if not more so, to that 17-18 season where we saw Leicester City win the league. So I'm really just kind of enjoying watching games. There's been some good ones outside of Tottenham ones, but there's been some very highly competitive play, especially what will end up probably being the middle of the table.
Yeah, the league deeper than it's ever been for sure.
Very much so. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a clear runway for Liverpool, and Manchester City will turn it around, and I think those two will kind of outpace everyone significantly. But I think everyone from third place really back to 10th, it'll be a much closer battle.
Absolutely, absolutely. Todd, you wanna go through your top 4, top 6?
I think Liverpool is the standard. That's who. I mean, just guys playing at a high level. And then I really like what Leicester's been doing and grinding games. Like watching Vardy the other day, that guy looked like he was hurt pretty good. Did not look like he was in full health. But I still think that there's something going on there that I enjoy watching. And then after that, really, I would love to say Tottenham's third and just say, yep, that's what's going to happen. But I like some of the stories that have been happening. So Wolves, the way they finished last year, the way they performed last year, and the way they fight, I enjoy watching them, and that would be a team that I would love to see in that thing. But Everton is doing great. I think James Rodriguez, this is his year to show that like he's worth something, and I think he's got a lot to prove. I just think that if Pickford actually like keeps the ball out of the net, they'll be fine. But yeah, he makes some really goofy mistakes on a regular basis. But yeah, I don't really. Everybody else can be after Tottenham, especially Arsenal. Arsenal go to the bottom.
I like it. I like it. Mason, you got any comments on those predicted finishes before we get out of here?
Man, you know mine. I had Chelsea finishing third in preseason. At this point, I don't even know if they're going to be top six. I think Tottenham have a better chance of getting top six than Chelsea do at this point. Until Chelsea proves me wrong, I don't have them finishing top six anymore. At least lower than third. But I don't want to dive too much into it. The main thing I want to see is Sheffield United score a goal. I have simple dreams.
Oh, my mate, it's been a rough one. It has been a rough one. So
It's been a bad start.
It has. It has. All right, gentlemen. Either one of you Tottenham guys want to say anything else before we wrap this up? Ryan, Todd, thanks. Nothing? Going once? Going twice? Go ahead, Todd.
Are you not going to actually show the man of the match from the Carabao Cup?
Oh, your boy Mr.
No, like Jose actually posted a picture of the toilet.
Oh no, I saw that meme. That was hilarious. Yeah. For anybody who didn't watch the Carabao Cup midweek, Mr. Dyer, apparently shit happens sometimes, and he had to run up the tunnel to go have a movement, and was followed by Jose Mourinho. I don't know if like he needs to be coached on how to use the bathroom. I don't know why Jose needed to go join him, but it was entertaining, and Tottenham came out with a win in a shootout in a very entertaining game. So, it couldn't have been that crappy to watch for you guys.
It brings back memories of, gosh, now I forgot the name of the movie, but Austin Powers, where it's like, yeah, boy, you show that turd who's boss.
That's right. Flush, you should know who's number two. I'm number two. Oh, hilarious, guys. All righty. Thank you guys for joining us so much. It's not soccer, it's football. Tottenham season preview. Have a good one, gentlemen.